It's a mystery that's rattled many of us who are reporters.
She plays a confidence game. She's definitely a career criminal. All her crimes are against persons such as access device frauds, simple robberies, thefts, things of that nature.
So let's set the scene. 27 years old, set to cover the biggest football game of the year. But in a terrible, shocking twist, you never got a chance to cover the game. That's what happened in Adan Manzano's case. He was found dead in his hotel room days before Sunday's kickoff. While investigators combed through clues as to what happened, here's what we first learned. Adan was a reporter at KGKC, or Telemundo, Kansas City. He actually pulled double duty as both an anchor and reporter. The station described him as a true professional and rising star who exemplified excellence in his work. And if you're into football, you know how the Chiefs might have been on their way to get a three-peat. So it wasn't the first time Adan covered the big game. It was his third season covering it for his station. Just last year, Adan experienced a huge tragedy. His wife was killed in a car accident. Then jumped to 2025. Now the couple's child is left without both parents. Right now, it's unclear how the 27-year-old died or his cause of death. But then a major update is made. Investigators made an arrest.
As you know, there's been an ongoing investigation. Kenner Police Department's been working this around the clock. We had some new developments last night.
So that woman you see behind the Kenner police chief is 48-year-old Danette Colbert, and she could be a key piece into unlocking what happened to Adan. Now, why is she so important to the story? Well, not only was she caught on surveillance video with Adan at his hotel room in the hours before he was discovered dead, but she was arrested after Adan's phone and credit card were found at her home.
On the detectives processing the hotel room, Mr. Manzano's hotel room, they had discovered that a credit card was missing. It was the same credit card that was used to check into the hotel, as well as a cell phone that was missing. They additionally went to the front desk and reviewed the video surveillance from the security cameras in the hotel, and that's when they observed Mr. Manzano arriving at his room about 4:30 or 5 in the morning on February 5th, entering the room. Short time later, the female left and then came back, and then by 6 a.m., she left and never returned. Mr. Manzano was not seen on that security footage after entering that room. Investigation led us to develop a suspect, Ms. Danette Colbert.
Now, obviously, it's strange for her to have Adan's items in the first place, but maybe not so strange if you have a history of allegedly drugging men and robbing them.
Ms. Colbert has quite a record and rap sheet for confidence games, access device fraud, and robbery schemes. So the investigation led to a search warrant and an arrest warrant, one being issued for the person of Ms. Colbert and the other for her residence in Slidell. The Kenner Police Department, along with the Major Crimes Task Force, did locate Ms. Colbert in the city of New Orleans last night about 10:30. She was taken into custody. She is still in the city of New Orleans being processed as a fugitive. With the assistance of the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office, a search warrant was executed at her residence, at which time Mr. Manzano's credit card and cell phone were located inside that residence. Some narcotics were found, as well as a stolen firearm. We don't believe the firearm's related to this case. So that's what we have at this time. I'm willing to answer any questions you might have, and we will make available the past arrests. It's important to note that Ms. Colbert's criminal history does include 2 instances where she drugged a victim and stole his access device cards and things of that nature.
So if you're wondering if she's charged with murder, right now, no.
Well, right now, the only crime we have are property crimes. Like I said, this investigation is still ongoing. I just want to give you an update, but as soon as the coroner finishes with his findings, then they will classify it as either homicide or whatever death the evidence leads them to, and then these charges could be upgraded.
But is it possible Adan was drugged? We could learn that once the toxicology report is released. However, police say no drugs were found in his hotel room. However, Danette reportedly in the past has been dubbed the Bourbon Street Hustler. So let's go back to a point the police chief made about Danette's criminal history. It's a lengthy one. In 2016, she used the victim's credit card to buy $1,500 worth of gift cards, but also was in possession of this victim's Rolex watch and iPhone. Now, she pleaded guilty to those charges. She was charged in Nevada in January of 2022 and July of that same year for grand larceny and administering a drug to aid in the commission of a felony. Now, both of those cases were dismissed, but the details of the case are remarkably similar. A man told police he met 2 women at a bar and invited them to his hotel room. When he woke up, he reportedly had a bloody nose and found that $50,000 in cash, his Rolex watch worth $30,000, $11,000 in casino chips, his iPhone, and more of his items were missing. Then 6 months later, she was arrested again after a victim told police his $60,000 watch and $1,500 in casino chips and his credit card were also missing. Then in 2023, she faced criminal charges in Orleans Parish for credit card fraud and theft. She was found guilty in that case, but sentenced to 5 years of probation and was actually on probation when she was arrested. But since her face has made national headlines, police say they've gotten a number of calls from different people claiming to be victims of similar crimes, or they've reported deaths under similar suspicious circumstances. But it's unclear if those cases are connected to Danette.
But she plays a confidence game. She's definitely a career criminal. All her crimes are against persons such as access device frauds, simple robberies, thefts, things of that nature.
So she has a history of finding her way into person's confidence, maybe into the rooms, and at some point robbing them, drugging them. I mean, what is?
Well, we know of 2 cases prior where this has happened, and in this case, so there's definitely 3 cases in which she's got access to their personal information and their credit cards in that manner, and there's several others on her rap sheet that don't go into that much detail. Everybody should be aware of their surroundings, and this brings to light that there are people out there that prey on other people and bring them into their confidence and victimize them. You asked if this was a homicide. I don't know where it's going to end up. Like I said, we're going to let the evidence lead us to the end result and not speculate, but these are the kind of things that can happen if you're out in any city by yourself, or it's a major concern. I know that whenever you have a major event like the Superdome, you get these traveling criminals that do come in and find find victims. So it's something that people really need to be aware of.
Now, since that press conference, police are reportedly investigating whether Danette was involved in the death of a tourist back in December. Police said a man from Maryland was found dead in a hotel room in the French Quarter and was last seen walking down Bourbon Street. This man's death was ruled accidental, but his family told investigators he had property missing too. Again, she hasn't been charged with murder in that case or Adan's case at this time. So for now, while we wait for the medical examiner to officially rule on a cause of death, Danette Colbert remains locked up, only charged with property crimes, including fraud and theft. There are so many questions surrounding this case. Let's bring on now former FBI and CIA agent Tracy Walder. Tracy, always great to see you. First, I have to ask you, given what we know right now, what's your reaction to this case?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth. I think the saddest part, right, is that his 2-year-old daughter is now an orphan. I think that's really where my mind goes to. I think also to what I think, given the information out there, is that I don't know if the intent was to kill him. It would be a huge escalation of this woman's crimes. And so that will be interesting to see ultimately, depending on obviously the medical examiner's ruling on the cause of death, what she is charged with.
And, right now, and as we all anxiously await for that report, does any part of you think that this is actually a homicide case and that's where this might be leading towards?
I think it is a homicide case. Again, obviously it's speculation at this point, but the medical examiner did say that they were waiting essentially to rule on cause of death based on toxicology reports. So what that tells me is based on her past in terms of drugging and robbing individuals. My guess tells me that the drugs that she may have given to him to make him submissive may have ultimately resulted in his death. Otherwise, I feel that we would have a manner of death at this point.
And, given all the information that we know at this point, what all goes into an investigation like this? We have a young man who's found dead in his hotel room. Investigators say the woman last seen with him has that long rap sheet, as you just mentioned, that includes like allegations of drugging men, robbing them. So what all goes into an investigation like this, given everything that we know right now, and how important is evidence like cell phone evidence, the surveillance video that investigators were talking about? How important is that in a case like this?
I think in a case like this, the cell phone evidence as well as any digital video evidence actually was paramount, because I think it was essential. Obviously, it's also very surprising to me how brazen she is. This is a hotel. This is a hotel chain. I believe it was a Comfort Suites, who absolutely has digital surveillance. There's no question in their hallways, elevators, those kinds of things. And so she didn't seem bothered by that, or it didn't register to her that it was there. And so my guess is they're probably working backwards, because they were able to track the two of them together on Bourbon Street earlier that day. And they were probably able to do that by initially starting from when they saw her leaving his hotel room, and then working back to when they entered the hotel, back to when they were out on Bourbon Street, and even further back, to really determine the nature of this relationship and whether or not she was a willing guest, right, to his room. Did he invite her in? Was he being held against his will? All of those things. So that helped identify her. But I think the next piece will help identify her movements afterwards. What was she doing to try to cover this up? And that's where his cell phone will definitely come into play, as well as the financial evidence, because she was using his credit card.
And, given your expertise, what possible drug would incapacitate someone that could possibly have left them dead? Would it be like fentanyl or something? Would it be another type of maybe poisoning drug? What would leave a young man who appeared perfectly healthy incapacitated and possibly could have led to his death?
So I don't believe that it's fentanyl. And the reason I don't is because she's actually done this before and someone did not die as a result of it. And fentanyl is very unstable in terms of the dosing and all of that. And a very, very, very small amount can kill you. So I actually don't, I could be wrong, obviously, but I don't believe this is fentanyl. I think it may have actually been GHB, or what we call a date rape drug, on the streets. And she may have given him too much. He may have had an underlying condition that, reacted to it. We don't know. But I think because she has done this before, I'm inclined to say that it's more of a GHB, roofie, date rape drug, those kinds of things, rather than fentanyl, just because the reality is fentanyl would kill someone almost instantly. So I actually don't think that it was that.
And that's very interesting that you bring that up. And just going off Danette Colbert's rap sheet, how do you think she managed to continue to kind of, in a way, get away with this? It seems from her rap sheet, she has this pattern of robbing, theft, drugging individuals, and pretty much stealing from them. So how does she manage to continually do this?
I mean, look, she is being convicted, right? And she is serving sentences as a result of these. But yes, she is a repeat offender, as you mentioned. And so it raises the question that, as someone accumulates these kinds of charges, because they were felony charges, because she had used something to incapacitate individuals. And so on top of that, that's not a minor robbery charge, right? That could lead to, serious bodily harm and those kinds of things. So I believe that, the reality is her sentences weren't necessarily serving as a deterrent for her, right? In terms of committing these crimes. I think I don't even necessarily believe that she slipped under the radar, because she was tried and convicted for several of these things. She has a rather long rap sheet, but the reality is the punishment wasn't enough to obviously keep her off the streets for that long of a time.
Absolutely. And, I can't even imagine what it's like as a reporter to go cover the biggest game of the year in the football season, that being the Super Bowl. I can imagine the energy is very electric there, especially it's in New Orleans. At the time, Kansas City was going for a three-peat, all of that sort. But my question to you is, given that energy that is in the city of New Orleans at that time, do you think that Danette Colbert, and again, this is just speculating here, do you think that she may have allegedly just sought out Adan and saw him there, thought of him as possibly a target, thinking that maybe she could get more out of him, or thinking that, that he was just an easy target? Do you think that's at all a possibility?
Yes, I absolutely believe that Ms. Colbert identified him as a target. I think that's what she has been doing throughout the course of all of her crimes, quite frankly, is looking for individuals that may appear as, well-dressed, well-kept, those kinds of things. And my guess is, being that he is a TV reporter, he probably presented that way. I also feel, again, I don't know for certain, that he may have been alone out on Bourbon Street, which there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I've gone on trips before and traveled places by myself, but I do think that probably made him more of an agreeable target, because he's isolated. You don't need to isolate him. And so I absolutely believe that I don't think she sought him out, in the days prior to this, but I think she found her target on Bourbon Street.
Yeah, and it's just so heartbreaking, given everything that he had went through with his wife dying in that crash. Now,
Yeah.
this has happened to him. It's just truly a heartbreaking story overall. How important, once that toxicology report comes out, how important will that be to the case?
It's going to be critical because that's going to determine, right, the manner of death. How did he die? And I do believe it will show drugs in his system. And because Ms. Colbert has, quite the rap sheet, right, of doing something like this, the difficulty that I think a prosecutor would have in a case like this is putting the drugs in her hands, right? Is she the one that administered them? Because there's obviously not a video camera inside of that hotel room. But I do think, based on what she had been using to drug people in the past, they could probably make some commonalities there. So I think it's going to be critical in this case.
Oh, I'll have to wait and see how this all continues to unfold. Tracy, I want to thank you so much for your insight into this case. Before we sign you off, though, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you so much, though, for having me, Elizabeth.
Of course. Tracy, again, thank you so much. I always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Online records show Danette Colbert is still behind bars in the Jefferson Parish Correctional Center, held without bail. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.